Greetings and thank you for joining us for the 34th episode of DC Animation with Spencer and Friends. This is an LMG Podcast Production. Today, I'm joined by a dear friend.
Cassidy.
Yes, Cassidy is here with us for the second time. It has been a while since you've heard Cassidy's voice, but if you've been, rocking with me from the beginning, then you remember. You remember. Real quick, Cassidy, for the people who don't know, could you tell us a little bit about your DC consumption? What DC do you or are you or have you taken in?
My primary source of consumption for DC is going to be the television show Smallville. Huge fan of Clark Kent, and I am a super fan of that show. You could argue I've watched every episode multiple times over. I rewatch it as much as I can. I'm also a big fan of the Superman movies from the 70s and a pretty big fan of Christian Bale's Batman. Really loved those movies that are coming out and really liked Gotham as well. So I would say of all of DC, I'm more Superman, Batman biased in the sense of where my knowledge stands, but that's where my primary consumption probably lies.
Okay, okay. I would definitely consider you an authority on Smallville. Like if I ever have questions or if I ever wonder if something happened in Smallville, yeah, I'm gonna have to come to you because I don't know how many times you've watched it, but uh I know that you are intimately familiar with the show.
Just a
To the
bit.
point where if somebody else is in something, you'll be like, they were in Smallville.
That's the joke, right? That if I can find a way to relate anybody back to Smallville at some capacity.
Yeah, I feel like I'm that way with Law and Order SVU. Like
Yeah.
I can yep, that person was in an episode.
Mhm.
So, okay. Well, I appreciate you for joining us on this journey through DC animation. Today's film is The Death of Superman, released July 24th, 2018, and the comic book on which it was based is of the same name. I'm going to read a synopsis in my own words, and then we're just going to talk about it. So, we open in Metropolis, where Intergang is trying to kidnap the mayor. Luckily, Superman shows up to save the day. Now that the day is saved, Superman calls in the League to help clean up, and Cyborg takes a piece of the armor that they were wearing to his dad because it's looking apocalypse. So we're just gonna see what happens there. Superman gives Lois Lane an exclusive interview about his history and then drops her off at the Daily Planet where he meets back up with her as Clark Kent. Mr. and Mrs. Kent are coming to town, and Clark decides it's time to introduce Lois to them. Over at Star Labs, Silas Stone and John Henry Irons let Superman and Cyborg know that it is apocalyptic, but also there's some Earth in the mix. And it would take some very serious resources to execute that. So Superman immediately goes to Lex Luthor's house because obviously he's behind it. But Lex claims that his house arrest would not allow him to be responsible. Lois accidentally tells Cat Grant about her relationship with Clark, and Hank Henshaw and his crew are working on some stuff in space, and a boom tube opens, and something is hurtling toward Earth. Lex Luthor breaks his house arrest in disguise and goes to LexCorp, where he is monitoring the object that is heading toward Earth. Hank's crew is getting bombarded by the object and its debris, and Hank is just absolutely sure that Superman is going to come save them, but everybody's killed by the objects before that can happen. The big object falls into the ocean and is immediately reported to Lex. Superman and Wonder Woman are fighting Metallo and Cheetah in a training simulation when Cyborg calls them into the meeting room. Lex sends a crew down to the ocean to locate the object, and they run into some Atlanteans, and so everybody goes to investigate. Upon reaching the object, the Atlanteans are immediately killed, and then Lex's crew. At the Justice League meeting, the League discusses the budget, and Superman asks Flash about revealing his secret identity to his fiancée. That evening, Lois meets Jonathan and Martha Kent, and they start, telling stories about Clark's youth, and that makes Clark uncomfortable because he fears anyone getting too close. Down in the ocean, Aquaman investigates the crime scene and reports his findings to the League. The next day, Clark invites Lois to lunch so that they can talk, but Superman gets an alert that there's a creature on a rampage. But the other members of the League are sent out to take care of it. The League arrives, and Hawkman is the first to get his ass beat, and then Green Lantern, and then Flash. So Batman calls in some help because things are getting very serious, and if those three can't do anything, then Batman's chances aren't looking good. So Lex takes a trip over to Cadmus to check on the progress of an experiment that he commissioned, and Batman is fighting the creature while Lois and Clark go to lunch. Clark admits to Lois that he is Superman and that he loves her before off to fight this creature. Lois gets picked up by the chopper so that she can report on the matter, and more members of the League show up for the fight. Cyborg, Aquaman, and Martian Manhunter are next to get effortlessly handled by the creature. Wonder Woman issues a one-on-one challenge and does a little better than everybody else, but it does not go well for her. Just before she is killed, Superman shows up to save her. And of course, they begin fighting, and Lois gives the creature a name, Doomsday. Lex goes to fetch his power suit just in case Superman gets taken down by Doomsday. And of course, the fighting continues into the night, and things are not looking good for Superman. Just as Doomsday is about to attack Lois, Lex shows up in his super suit, and he's here to fight Doomsday. Lex is doing okay, and then Lex starts monologuing, and Doomsday rips him out of the suit, but luckily he is saved by Superman, who continues the fight. Just as Doomsday is about to kill Superman, Lois throws a rock as a distraction, and that turns Doomsday's attention to her. She expresses that she loves Superman too, and that allows him to find the strength to kill Doomsday. But Doomsday managed to get one of his freshly grown Baraka spikes into Superman. Superman dies in Lois's arms, and the victory and death are broadcast to the world. The League is present at the funeral, all except for Batman. And Lex Luthor speaks at the funeral, expressing that he will actually miss Superman, even though they have their differences. Lex enjoys a celebratory glass of wine. Lois and the Kents mourn together, and the next day, Lex Luthor attempts to collect Doomsday's body for Cadmus, but Star Labs is not having it. Then Superman's rocket just starts flying away on its own. Jimmy goes to Lois and says, "Hey, get in the car. We're going to take a ride. I got something to show you." So Superman's casket is empty, and they spot a figure that looks a lot like Superman flying in the sky. After some credits, Cadmus is a mess, and one of the clones has escaped. And then after some more credits, Cyborg Superman is heading toward Earth. And that's the movie. So, Cassidy, what do you think of the movie?
I had a real great time with this movie. I watched it twice. I watched it yesterday and today, so I could just really make sure I got everything I needed out of it. I will say, right when it started, and right when particularly Cyborg came on and opened his mouth, because to preface this, I don't look up who's the voices of anybody when before these because I think it's kind of fun just to see if I can recognize voices. And since I'm so unfamiliar with DC animation, I tend to be surprised every time. And this time was no different. So when Cyborg starts talking and it's just Shamar Moore right there, I was like, okay, unexpected, good time. But the one that really got me was Lex coming on screen, and I just hear Dwight Schrute coming out of that man's mouth.
Yeah, like whenever Lex talks, immediately it's Dwight.
Dwight.
Because I'm not even necessarily a fan of The Office, but I immediately
You
knew who
know
it
it's
was.
Dwight.
Yeah.
So that was I'm very open to different interpretations of Lex because there's been so many different interpretations of Lex throughout the years that have gone amazing. Um, but this one was a bit of a different one. And I know it was only vocally, but he's just got such a well-known voice for such a well-known character that I was like, every time Lex talked, I was like, Dwight, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So that was interesting for me just listening through. Um, I did like some of the storylines in here that you just see translated into other Superman um, TV shows and films. Just the when he reveals himself to Lois, because that goes differently in every which one. I like that this one was just casually in a diner. By the way, I'm Superman. That was so casual and funny to me, and so quick. And there was build up, but there wasn't almost. I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Um, and then I liked how something that it happens in some of the movies too, where the Kents can't interact with him when he's Superman. So upon his death in this film, and the Kents being told to like step away, because famously in Smallville he's never Superman, Clark Kent isn't, so like the kids are always there if they need to be there kind of thing, and just seeing them not have that ability to go and mourn their son, just anytime I see that any kind of thing, and here was no different. I was just like, oh my gosh, like these poor parents, and they have to act like they have no clue who this person is personally. They're just like, and the cop just being like, yeah, we'll miss him too. Like, no, you don't get it.
Yeah. You have no idea.
You don't understand. um and so that one hurt a little bit. And Lex in this was funny to me. I like how Clark tried to help him out and stuff, because I always, with particularly the Lex and Clark relationship, i I see them from, again, I'm just gonna keep bringing up Smallville until you tell me to stop, Spencer. But
Bring it up. I don't think anybody else has brought up Smallville. And
cool.
uh and I will say that is one of the reasons I had you on this one.
So with Smallville, the whole start of the show is showing how Clark and Lex were friends for years before he ever really became quote unquote Superman. And so part of the whole series of Smallville is as Lex progressively gets evil, more evil, and like comes into his evilness, I guess, his villainous. He Clark still will always, as much as he can't stand Lex anymore, there's always this soft spot, and he can't let something happen to him, kind of thing. And he's always willing to save him, which I know that's Superman's whole shtick, but like he really just doesn't like Lex, but he'll always save him at some capacity. And I think it's just interesting to see that, where he's on the brink of death and like still tries to save him and puts in that effort. Um, and I also like too I'm jumping all over this place. I'm not being very chronological with my thoughts on this
Not an issue.
movie. um, back
Like we'll
to
we'll talk about the movie chronologically later. So you're good.
okay. um, I wanted to go back to the Clark and Lois and just the complications in their relationship that were brought up in this. Again, it's always the ultimate superhero drama. Like, do I tell them, but they won't be safe? And it's just, they never will be safe, but then you're never going to be happy. And it's this whole thing, and it's back and forth. And I liked that conversation that they were having with meeting the parents, though, and bringing up some other characters that aren't present in the animation, because they bring up Lana Lang, they bring up Pete Ross, who are some of my favorite characters in the DC realm. So that was a good time, and that was fun. Now with the bad guys, Doomsday exists within Smallville, but in a very different form, in a very much longer progression of things. Like Doomsday,
Tell me about Doomsday in Smallville, because I it's always interesting to see different versions of Doomsday, and Doomsday, and correct any of this that's incorrect.
yeah,
Doomsday has what it takes to be like the main villain of an entire season. And
yes,
so I would assume that of Superman's Rogues Gallery that Doomsday was given a season. Like, I'm hoping that Doomsday was not a monster of the week. I'm hoping
No,
that Doomsday was given time to breathe, but based on the nature of Doomsday, sometimes it can be difficult to make a creature like that last that long,
correct.
because usually if we're talking about a series, then the villain needs to have a mind,
Hmm.
and Doomsday is often mindless. Now there are versions of Doomsday that can talk and that have, opinions and that do stuff. It just depends. But I would figure the interpretation of Doomsday in Smallville was more intricate, if I had to guess. Either more intricate or that somebody is controlling Doomsday in some form.
Hmm. So on Smallville, Doomsday was not a freak of the week, as they liked to call it. Doomsday was a main character named Davis Bloom. So it's this paramedic character that was like progressed into like it. And forgive me, Spencer, because he during my current rewatch, I haven't gotten to Doomsday's presence.
So it's not as fresh.
It's not as fresh in my mind, but there's a character named Davis Bloom who he's a paramedic, and so he's this right good old guy, sweet guy. But he progresses into Doomsday. So like he is his own, he's his own person and everything. And like he um uh I'm trying to think of how to explain how he turned into Doomsday though. Because it's just like something got activated within him and it's like this progression of he like has these blackouts so he's not thinking when he is Doomsday. And it just kind of consumes him.
So does he physically change and then physically change back?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a werewolf situation, kind of.
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of.
So,
And I'm like,
or a Jekyll and Hyde, maybe, or
it's more
you
of a
know.
Jekyll and Hyde kind of, yeah. It's just like, because it's just like these periods of blackouts, and he doesn't like fully transform, if I recall. Oh, I should have just skipped a few seasons before. I should have known better.
That's okay.
uh,
Not a big deal.
yeah, but he's there to. I want to say it's more of a Jekyll and Hyde situation, but he's like his own person. And me, who was not familiar with I was not familiar at all with the comics going into Smallville whenever I was watching it. So anything that happened on Smallville, these were characters that were only existed in that world to me. So I had no clue what Doomsday was or was happening or was going to be. Um, but he had a huge arc that, yeah, he got to have.
Okay.
Uh, And I just remember they made him a very lovable human character, which that's the way to do it, right? Make them like
Yeah.
this really lovable character, and then they're like, no, they're actually the worst thing possible. Like you don't want them around at all.
Okay. Okay. Well, cool. I wondered how Smallville handled Doomsday, if they handled Doomsday. Um, and yeah, it sounds like it's because there are a lot of people who have compared Doomsday to like the Hulk,
Hmm.
and this would kind of be like he's a normal dude, but then, something happens and now he's
Yeah,
a giant monster that is pure destruction. So,
yeah.
okay. Okay. So, what were your thoughts on the art style?
I enjoyed it. I There were some moments that, and I think this is just the nature of animation. I don't know. I don't watch enough. That it felt like some things didn't match up right, but I think it's just because they draw the backgrounds right, and then they draw on top of it. Yeah, isn't that how
Usually.
that works? But I don't feel that I could say more one way or the other, just because I don't watch enough to know if this was the best or not the best.
Okay.
But I enjoyed watching it, like for sure.
Okay. This movie exists in a larger universe. So there are a lot of movies with this art style, and this is a continued story. So That's why there's stuff that's referenced in past movies, and we're going to talk about some of that a little bit as we talk through this.
Very cool.
So, um, we open in Metropolis with Intergang. Do you ever remember Intergang being mentioned in Smallville?
Those were not characters that I was familiar with. No.
Okay, like Intergang just kind of refers to like a large syndicate that is responsible for, whatever.
Stuff in the game.
Um, and they're trying to kidnap the mayor, and Superman, comes in, saves the day, so, not really an issue. Like the Intergang dudes aren't anything to worry about. Superman just kind of deals with them. But the armor that they're wearing is like that's something we need to talk about. What's the deal there?
What's going on? Yeah.
And so, he calls in some other people just to let you know that like this is a movie where everybody like this is a universe where everybody's in it. So there was the very first official DC animated movie, not the like the actual first one. There were some before this, but like the first official DC animated movie is Superman Doomsday, which was the very first episode of this podcast. I reviewed it with Brandon. And that movie tells this same, or it's based on this same comic book story. And in that movie, it is very much a Superman movie. Like, it is not a Justice League movie. So, Superman is the only Justice League member you really see in that movie. They don't really reference anybody else. Like, it's a relatively tight Superman movie. This, involves the rest of the world that exists, and I really appreciate that. And so the first people we see Cyborg and Flash is, like, pissed that he's always called in to clean things up. But it's like Flash, I mean, that makes sense. Like
Yep.
you can do that. And Cyborg is like, this looks apocalyptic. I'm going to go talk to my dad about it. And then you'll notice Superman mentions, like, do you want me to take it? Because I know that you and your dad, like, y'all may not be on the best of terms. That speaks directly to Cyborg's origin story, which we do see in the first movie that exists in this universe, which is Justice League War. Cyborg and his father have a, turbulent relationship because Cyborg was a football star. And does Cyborg show up in Smallville?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. He's in like two or three episodes, but yes.
Is the famous Jet Jackson Cyborg in?
Yes, he is.
Okay, cool.
Yes. He's
Um,
fabulous.
so, Cyborg is a football star and his dad is a scientist, and basically his dad doesn't go to any of his games because he's like, what you do doesn't matter. I'm a scientist. So he does, important science things. And then there's a situation with a mother box, and that is how Cyborg becomes Cyborg. I assume you know at least a little bit about that, but I also don't know what Smallville covered. Like, I don't know if Smallville is a situation where like he's already Cyborg and they don't go over that, or
He was already there, kind of thing. They didn't go too deep into it. It's just he was there. This is why he is who he is now, kind of thing, but not so much. This is how we built him into this. Like
okay.
he's just this cyborg now, is essentially
Okay,
a lot.
so that's why his relationship with his dad is turbulent because he not only felt like his dad was ignoring him and his dreams, but then he felt like, oh, now you want to be in my life because I'm one of your experiments. Like, because Silas was studying the mother box and Cyborg like pulled it and was like, is this what's more important than me? And then it exploded and it just fucked him all up. And then Cyborg's dad was like, I have to save you. And so he puts him into a machine, and Cyborg, is resentful because he's like, well, now I'm a cyborg. I'm not even human anymore. Like, all that. So their relationship is turbulent. And Superman is like, do you want me to take it? Because I mean, I know that things aren't great. And Cyborg says, like, no problem ever got better by ignoring it. I was like, that's a hero thing to say.
Very much.
Yeah, okay. You're okay, Mr. Superhero Man. Okay. So cool. That happens. And then we see that Superman is giving Lois Lane the exclusive interview. just telling her all the Superman things. And so in Smallville, do we see any of that? Do we see Superman, see anything from Krypton? Do we see like what does he know about Krypton, or what was he given?
He knows a lot about Krypton. So first episode, he doesn't know so much, but from the start of the show onward, it's just him learning more and more about his origin, who he is. You get to see, like, we've got the Fortress of Solitude as a major location in the show. He goes there fairly often, and we get to hear a lot of Jor-El. So he's very familiar with Krypton and becomes more and more familiar as the show progresses.
Okay, cool. Okay. So we see him, kind of going over some of that history with Lois, and then he drops her off at the Daily Planet after, giving her a little trip through the clouds, and then he returns as Clark Kent, which I thought was great. Um, that turnaround. And it looks like Mr. and Mrs. Kent are coming to town. And Lois is like, "Oh, I get to meet the parents." And Clark is like, "Well, I mean, do you?" And then Lois is like, if you don't want me to meet your folks, then fine. I'm a grown ass woman,
Yes, she is.
and I know whenever I'm being played. So yeah, if you don't want to do this, just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "No, no, no. I want to do this. I will. Fine. You can meet them. Yeah, sure. Okay. Let's fine."
Fine.
Just reluctantly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So, now we're back to Superman. Over at Star Labs, Silas Stone and John Henry Irons are, looking over the armor, or the chunk of armor that they received. Are you familiar at all with John Henry Irons?
Not to, I say this, there's some characters that I could tell you face wise, but I couldn't remember. There weren't names weren't notable, so I don't believe I am.
Okay. And that is definitely not a problem. We will talk more about him later, but he is the superhero Steel.
Okay, no, I definitely don't know about him.
Okay. We will probably talk about him later, but he does make a reference to a previous movie.
Okay.
Because you notice he said um that he has seen Superman before, and it was very clear that he was very excited about seeing Superman. In the movie Thrones of Atlantis is when he did see Superman, and if you know who he is, then you saw the reference like as it happened in the movie. Um, you folks can go listen to the earlier episode for that. But they tell Superman and Cyborg, yes, it's an apocalypse and Earth mix. So we could do that here at Star Labs, but I don't know who is out here being able to make this happen. Perhaps Wayne Tech may have the resources to make that happen. And you see Superman's face change, and Superman's like, "Oh, I know who did it. Don't worry. Let me go handle that right now. I'm gonna go I'm gonna take a walk because I gotta go see somebody." So he goes over to Lex's house and is like, "Lex, what are you doing? What do you work? What is this? I know it was you because nobody else is able to do that. I know it wasn't Wayne Tech because me and Mr. Wayne are dear friends. So what do you have to say for yourself?" And Lex is like, "I haven't the slightest clue what you're talking about."
Little me.
Yeah, me, I've been here the whole time.
Never.
When would I have ever been able to? I've been meditating, Superman. Whatever do you mean? And yeah, my house arrest doesn't even allow me. Like, how would I have done it? Intergang has stuff all over the planet, and it was me. That how? Tell me how I did it. And Superman's like, "I don't know, but I don't know, but I don't like it. I know it was you,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna get to the bottom of it. Just you wait." And so, Lois and Cat Grant are talking. Are you familiar with Cat Grant at all?
No.
Okay. Um, how I really know Cat Grant is from the Supergirl show.
Okay.
So the Supergirl show that exists in the Arrowverse, Cat Grant, Catco is the company that Supergirl works for, and Cat Grant is the CEO at the beginning of the show. So, like, Cat Grant is her boss. We see Cat Grant like regularly, like she's in the cast list. And so that's mainly where I've seen Cat Grant. But
You might
otherwise, oh,
one
go
of
ahead.
those characters. When I do these rewatches, there's always something that pops up, and there's like these subtle nods that pop up. And so I wouldn't be surprised if she's there. It's just never
And
clicked
yeah,
in.
that's the thing. Like, because of that show, I now pay attention to her when I see her.
Mhm,
So as I've done this rewatch, like she'll just randomly be a reporter on something, or she'll randomly be like the lady on the news. Like there are times she will pop up just
mhm,
randomly, and now I know who she is, and I kind of look for her.
mhm,
Now, in this, of course, she, was doing a lot more talking, but usually you'll just see a news story of Cat Grant here at, whatever the scene is. And so, yeah, like
mhm.
she's reporting. So, Cat Grant and Lois are talking, and Cat Grant observes that something's going on with Clark because she said he's the only handsome man here. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I noticed that y'all been spending time together. We're journalists. Like,
What do you think?
yeah, like
I can't pay
it's
attention.
it's kind of our job to see
Yep.
things because nobody's looking for Jimmy. So like, yeah, we noticed that y'all been hanging out, and she confirms it by asking. So heard you're gonna meet the parents. He was like, "How'd you hear that? Heard it from you just now."
So good.
Yeah. So yeah, she's like, he doesn't want anybody to get too close. And Kat is even like, yeah, we know nothing about him. Like he seems to, be very guarded at all times. So just saying. And so after that, we see that Hank Henshaw and his crew were out in space, working on some stuff. Are you familiar at all with Hank Henshaw?
No,
Okay.
I did not
Hank,
like the scene, Spencer.
you know what?
I did not like the space scene, Spencer.
I bet it was not good.
Devastating.
Yeah. So Hank Henshaw is another person who's in Supergirl, but very different in Supergirl than in any other situation I've seen him in.
Okay.
So usually he is Cyborg Superman. In
Okay.
Supergirl, he is Martian Manhunter who has kind of taken over the identity of Hank Henshaw, who died and was a terrible dude earlier. So who he is in Supergirl is very different than any other time I've seen him.
That makes me wonder who is the Martial Manhunter or the Martian Manhunter in Smallville, who his
Now, and Martian, I don't think that those two are like, I think this is the only time we've seen those two kind of
okay.
form together because Martian Manhunter is usually John Jones
Okay,
and
I was gonna say he was John Jones in Smallville. I was like trying to think. I
yeah,
was like, there's no way that was him. I feel like I would have remembered Martian Manhunter with Hank.
yeah, no. That's again like the only time I've ever seen that is in Supergirl,
Okay.
and it
Yeah.
was it was a surprise because I was like,
That's not
what?
normal.
Yeah, I was like, that's not, no, that's not, that's weird, but
Mhm.
yeah. So, Hank Henshaw is usually Cyborg Superman, and so that we'll probably talk about that later.
Mhm.
But a boom tube opens, and we just see something moving toward Earth. The next thing, so we see that Lex, you know, breaks his house arrest. Now, Lex, with the wig and the beard, uh, have you seen Lex with long red hair and a beard and like have you?
So Canon in Smallville, before Lex lost his hair, he was a redhead.
Mhm.
So I've seen young Lex, but I've never seen any older Lex with any hair going on, other than like the wigs that he would do in the movies. Smallville Lex was just always bald. And then when he wasn't, he was no, I don't think they ever had hair on adult Lex in Smallville
Okay.
at any capacity, not even a wig or anything.
Yeah, usually it's a situation where Lex is bald, but he is redheaded naturally, from everything that I've seen.
Which I didn't know until now. But when they did that, I was like, is he supposed to be
Yeah,
redheaded? Because
I
like I
think
know it from Smallville, but I thought it was just a stylistic decision.
no, I think every single time Lex has hair, it is red.
Hmm.
And so yeah, like whenever I saw the disguised man, I was like, wow, he doesn't look like Lex, but I know that's Lex
Right.
because I've in the comic book, there's a point when Lex looks like that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so like that was almost pretty like there's a comic book panel I remember where Lex looked like that. Like the long red hair
Uh-huh.
with the almost Amish beard. Like I vividly remember that. So um Lex whenever Lex said to Superman like, "What do you mean? I've been on house arrest." I was like, "Lex,
Let's
come
let's
on."
let's let's be real here.
Like like Lex, come on. Literally every version I've ever seen of you that has any kind of confinement, you
Hmm.
just don't like it. You are unbothered. Like you being
Yep.
confined is a ruse every single time.
Right.
We see an earlier Superman movie, All-Star Superman, where Lex is in prison and has an underground bunker where he could leave whenever he wants. Like it's hilarious to think that they're just holding him. It's like no.
Yeah, I'm just home all the time. Don't worry.
Yeah, and so whenever that's why Superman was like, I smell bullshit, but I can't prove anything right now.
Right.
So Lex, he goes to LexCorp because he's like, no, I monitor all and he goes on a monologue. He goes on a tirade. He starts attacking random people that are literally just doing their jobs.
Mhm.
And he goes on this whole like, I wish that I would have been the one to discover Superman because I'd have crushed him beneath my heel. I will not have any more aliens making me look bad. We're
Mhm.
not doing that.
Nope.
And so don't let me find another one. Don't let me be the first to discover anything. I'm telling you. And that's he goes on that monologue because
Yep.
Lex loves a monologue. And then
He really does. Any version of him just loves to hear himself talk. Love.
yes, loves a monologue.
Oh yeah.
And so he's monitoring the situation, and Hank's crew starts to get hit with this object because Houston calls, and Houston is like, "Hey, it's heading directly towards you. You need to move." And he's like, "Cool, let's do that. Everybody, forget what you're doing. Let's get in the ship. We need to make a change." And stuff starts happening, and everybody's like, "Hank, what are we gonna do?" And Hank is like, "Superman will save us. He
Hey.
always does.
Oh my gosh.
I
That's
know he
right.
will."
Right when he said it, I was like, "Oh, this movie's about to ruin my life."
Yep. Uh, I said the same thing whenever he said Superman will save us. I
I was
was
like,
like,
"Don't say that out
oh,
loud.
there it is.
Don't
That
say
that
it out loud.
that means it's not gonna be good.
You can't say it out loud."
And because I'm familiar with Doomsday, I know that Doomsday is a situation where a lot of bodies are caught. Now, because it was Hank Henshaw and I, know some things, I was like, Hank, I don't think you're gonna die, but you're gonna lose your crew. I know
It's not gonna
that.
go well for them.
Yeah, like the fact that they barely have names, yeah, like it's not looking good for your crew. And so yeah, the crew they get, dealt with. I mean, they're just floating in space now. And then Hank just with peace in his voice is like, Superman will save me.
So calm.
Yeah,
So
just
sure.
because every time anything else has happened, Superman came to save him. And so he was like,
Okay.
yeah, oh, yeah, I'm not worried. Superman will save us. And then yeah, just taken off the set by the big one because there were like little ones that, were a problem. And then, yeah,
Choo
that
choo,
big
and
one,
then the
yeah, pow. I was like, oh no.
it was so rough. It was so rough. And I was just again, it would have been better honestly if he hadn't said anything. I would have just been like,
That's,
oh, okay, bye, Hank. But no, I was like, no.
yeah,
Don't
very
say that.
specifically, him saying Superman will save us was the
Right.
thing. I was like, there it, yep, well, there it is.
Okay.
That's how movies work. We know what's gonna happen now. And so, yeah, so then we see the thing land in the ocean, and somebody calls Lex and is like, "Hey Lex, here are the coordinates." And Lex is like, "Very good. The medication for your son is
That was,
ready."
on brand.
Yeah, and I was like, that's wild, but that is absolutely true. Because
Yeah.
I have watched Lex in these movies. I have
Yeah.
watched Lex say, "We have a cure for it.
Yep.
I need you to lower the dose and make it last longer." Like Lex is capitalism,
Yes.
and in the most disgusting way. But yeah, whenever he said, "Yeah, don't now your son will be cured and you will have nothing to worry about," and that I was like, wow, they want you to just hate him. They're like, don't forget, he's a piece of shit. Never forget.
Truly. Truly.
Like, regardless of what's happening or if he's right always remember he's a
At
piece of
the
shit.
core.
Yeah,
Yep.
always remember that. Don't forget. And so, we see Superman and Wonder Woman fighting Cheetah and Metallo. And if you don't know that's a training, when I first watched this, I didn't know that was a training simulation. So I was like, why isn't Metallo blasting you with kryptonite right now? Like what are we what's this is a terrible version of Metallo. Like he's useless. And they're also, just kind of having the conversation about the relationship. And you'll notice that in their conversation, they talk about their own relationship.
Hmm.
And so in earlier movies, in Justice League War, Diana and Clark see each other for the first time, and they're both immediately like, "Hey,
Hey.
uh, you kind of strong now."
Hmm.
And they notice each other, they like each other, and they date.
Yep.
Uh, to the point where there was a movie where those two are on a date, and Diana's just wearing glasses, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's this easy to hide? Like, I just have on glasses."
Just class.
And so they kind of make fun of that
I love
thing.
that. I love that. So
And
sneaky.
and then Lois shows up at their date,
Oh.
and Lois is just talking shit, being like, "Oh, if this is a date, you should be at a fancier place than this,
Mhm.
Smallville," and just making things difficult. But before that, um they're just kind of talking, and Lois is like, "Oh, is this like a business lunch or something?" And Diana was like, "No, it's a date.
Said, no,
Yeah,
listen,
no, this is absolutely a date, in case you were wondering."
I'll tell you exactly what's going on here.
Yeah,
No
so
tiptoeing.
so that there are no questions. And
Yeah.
that's one of I love Wonder Woman so much. But yeah, Wonder Woman's kind of hit him with the hard truths. Like, I know we didn't work out, but if you want this to work out, then it sounds like you got some stuff you need to take care of.
100%. Yep.
And they Superman was like, "Hey Diana, with the real names, let's not do that." And she was like, "You literally just
That's called me Diana.
called me Diana."
I got such a kick out of that little bit because it was funny and then it ended up like cute because she was like your ego is Superman. He's like, she gave me that name. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
cute.
And I also like that. I like that the media is where, like, we see Lois be the one to create the names for
Yes,
people, and like the fact that the news is where these things actually come from, and that's how
yes.
it gets into the public. Like, I like that they use that as like a real way of how this becomes reality.
Yeah, I like how they went about that as well. I think Smallville does that as well. Like there's a character that's mainly there to write art. It's not Lois, But it's a character that's there through the whole time. That's just this journalist character, and she's the one that kind of just gets everything going in that same like gets that spark going, so you can see what's going on. That it's not these people making up stuff for themselves for sure at all.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. And so, um, Lex sends a crew to the ocean because we need to find this thing and we need to find it right now. I'm going to be first. And they see some movement and they see some Atlanteans. And Lex is like, oh, those are just Aquaman's people. Keep going. It'll be fine. Let's get this figured out. Because I'm hoping that Lex knew like if Aquaman's people want it, there's nothing you can do to stop them.
Yeah.
But because Atlanteans are a problem, and we learned that in an earlier movie, Thrones of Atlantis. But they reach the object, and a hand comes out and just starts just
Yeah.
doing heads like grapes. Like it is not good. And so there's just a cloud of blood down there. And Lex's people are like, oh shit, the Atlanteans are dying. We need to do something. And then they don't last much longer after that.
No.
And so at the Justice League meeting, they're discussing the budget, and Batman is like, budget issues, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it.
Hmm.
Which is hilarious. And then Wonder Woman gonna say, well, whenever your little business fails, I'll take care of it. And he's like, really? That's what we're doing?
Love that. I love her.
I love Wonder Woman so much.
Great.
Um, and so they talk about Flash and how he's to be married soon. And Superman is like, so tell me about Iris knowing about you being the Flash. And he was like, yeah, I told her ages ago. And he was like, so you're not worried about her being in danger or worried about that being a liability? You're not worried about that being an issue? He's like, no, that's what marriage is. Like, I need her to know what she is signing up for.
Yep.
And so marriage is trust, and I trust her. And, her knowing who I am doesn't make a difference as far as villains finding out who I am and attacking me through her.
Hmm.
So, and I don't know if that, argument was made, but my thought is like, if my wife knows who I am, that doesn't like, and even if my wife didn't know who I was, but the villains did, like, they're still going to use her. Like, so her knowing doesn't change the
Yeah,
fact
they'll
that
figure it out.
the world is dangerous and all
Exactly.
that. But that evening, Lois meets Jonathan and Martha Kent, and they're, telling stories about Superman's youth. And, this is where they mention, they drop some names.
Yes.
They say, our Clark, he dated a couple people, had a couple people in his life. And, Lana Lang,
Lana.
love a Lana Lang.
Gotta.
Um, then there were some other names that I don't remember that were referenced.
Yeah, there's like a Laurel, a Laura. I don't know. The two that's Lana was the big one, but Lana's always going to be the big one.
Yeah, agreed. And that's why that's the one I remember, and that's the end of that.
Yep.
So, yeah, they start telling stories, and Clark is like, oh, whoa, 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 you're doing way too much talking. Like, what's all this then? And so Superman is like, all right, let's get out of there. And Lois is like, what was that?
Hmm.
He's like, I didn't want you to be bored with all of their stories. No, I learned more about you tonight than in our entire time together.
Yep.
Like, I learned that you actually exist and have a history and, you know, aren't just
Floating
aloof or
around.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
like what? So, yeah, she was pissed and she was like, hey, we need to, this is not going well
No.
because you are still hiding yourself from me. It's very clear that you're hiding yourself from me, and I don't like it.
Mm-mm.
And so, down in the ocean, Aquaman is, looking over things, investigating the crime scene, and he's like, "Hey, Cyborg, here's what I found." Cyborg is like, "All right, cool. This is good to know because yikes." The next day, Clark says, "Hey Lois, let's go to lunch." Because Lois arrives at work and Kat is like, "So how'd it go?" And Lois is like, "Not great." And Kat is like, "Well, Clark been looking for you. He's found a reason to go by your desk a few times.
Yep.
So obviously he's looking for you." And, because he's Superman, he heard her come in and he's like, "Lois, hi, I bought you a coffee. I see that was handled already. That's okay, though. So let's go to lunch. There's this place that my friend told me about, um, that Jimmy's been raving about. So let's go there. But later, because I got a phone call." So Clark gets on the phone, and this is when I really noticed, because one of the things that I really like is whenever there is a difference between Clark and Superman as
Mhm.
far as the voice work goes. Whenever you can notice a vocal difference in who he is, I like that. It's the same with Batman and Bruce Wayne. Like, I love it
Yes.
when you can tell the difference between them. And so that's where I really heard the difference between them, because he was talking to her as Clark and then he went into the stairwell and turned into Superman. And I was like, "Ooh, that's good."
Ooh.
Yeah, like the fact that I could hear it, I noticed it, I knew who I was talking
I
to
love
right then.
it.
I was like, "Oh yeah, that's good work." And so that speaks to the vocal talent of Jerry, who was is has been the voice of Superman for a while. And honestly, I really like him voicing Superman.
This was a surprise to me because I looked the rest of them up after the fact, after Shamar and keep calling Dwight Rain. But I was like,
Dwight,
all right, that's a good Superman voice. Like, and he's not one of, and I think again, like I mentioned, there's a lot of people that are voice actors on here that I didn't know were voice actors on things, and he was definitely one of them. And I was like, he's great though. I enjoy him.
really like him.
Yeah,
Like,
he's cool.
he did a great job. And that's the again, like, this version of Superman, like the Superman that exists in this universe, is one of my favorite like, I love this version of Superman. What I don't like is his uniform.
Eh.
Like, I will say this is I'm not going to say this is my least favorite Superman outfit, but it's not very high. Like, I do not like this Superman uniform compared to other versions of Superman. But as far as temperament, um,
Mhm.
as far as the voice work that's being done, I love this version of Superman. Because this is a version of Superman who does not play around. Like,
No,
we usually see Superman being very, like, he's almost like too good to the point where there's no
almost.
character there.
Yeah, there's like a bleeding heart, almost a bit too much of it. Like it's like toughen up, bro. Like
But like in
you
this,
protect
Superman,
everything.
like, he's a good dude, but he's a person.
Yeah.
And he flexes a little bit. Like, in the first time he and Batman meet,
Mhm.
it does not go well for Batman. And that's exactly what should happen.
Yes.
The first time they meet, Batman gets embarrassed because he didn't have prep time. And the way that he's able to, handle the situation is basically by saying, like, "I've done my research on you. You maim, but you don't kill." And then he calls him by his government name. And then Superman does the X-ray vision and is like, "Okay, let's talk.
We can do this right
Yeah,
now.
let's
So
let's have a conversation. If that
let's
if
do
the,
this
a conversation, yeah, we can talk." Because Superman was about to put him down.
easily.
Like, again, this version, I love this version of Superman. Um, and I think the voice cast definitely helps with that. Like,
Mhm.
this guy voicing Superman, top tier work, in my opinion. And so, um, Superman gets an alert. Like, he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And there's like, "Hey, there's this creature who's rampaging. It is a problem. We've dispatched other members of the league." And Superman is like, "All right, cool, because I have an appointment
Mhm.
and I really don't want to miss it. So let me know if y'all need me, but please take care of it." So the league arrives, And Hawkman, comes in there, gets a couple nice hits, and then no,
Nope.
no Hawkman.
Done.
And then Green Lantern comes in, and this Green Lantern, his hubris is the most high. We in the first movie in Justice League War, we see this version of Green Lantern try to just go up with Darkseid, and he gets bitched immediately. And you can see that he has learned nothing. Like he always is just under the impression that he can take care of any threat.
He's got it. He's fine. He's
Now,
ready to go.
now also, the world heard me because anytime anybody asks me who should be Hal Jordan, Nathan Fillion
Can't
is my
wait
answer.
for Fillion, yeah.
Yeah, I love Nathan Fillion. Nathan Fillion is like my white guy that I'm like, it
Yep.
should be like we need a white guy, Nathan Fillion.
He started talking, I was like, hey.
Yeah, same. Like the first time I heard him, I was like, Nathan Fillion.
That's where I want to hear. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. So, this Green Lantern, very cocky, believes in himself, and that's kind of how we know Hal to be,
I was gonna say
because
that's the Green Lantern I want to see is a bit of
yeah,
just,
like the cockiness kind of
you know.
fits with the willpower,
Oh yeah.
and so he's next. He tries to put up a fight, and uh whenever he had Doomsday held, and then you see him like have to struggle to like keep him, it was like, oh,
Yep.
oh, he's too much. And so, yeah, he's next to get his ass beat, and Flash is like, hey, I'm gonna put you over here, and I'm gonna borrow this mace. It looks like it can get some stuff done. And so Flash, starts hitting him, and it's going okay. And then Doomsday like adapts to the situation. So I actually didn't ask you this. Let's talk
Hmm.
about Doomsday.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with I mean, we talked about Doomsday in Smallville, so I would assume you are not familiar with Doomsday's origin.
Not probably what it is comic book wise.
Okay, so Doomsday is a very, very old creature. How Doomsday came to be, there was a weird scientist dude who was trying to create the ultimate life form. So what he would do, he would take a baby and just put it in the wild. And then whenever that baby would die, he would bring it back to life, able to not die from the thing that killed him last time. So
Uh,
it would be reanimated, and then it would be immune to the thing that killed it last time. So it was adapting to every time it was killed, right?
Zombie baby.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so eventually it got to the point where it was strong enough to kill the guy that created it. Um because that's how that kind of situation, that's a different level of trauma. Like the fact like you created me to die infinitely in a loop, um
yeah.
to make me stronger and be able to survive anything and adapt. And so Doomsday's whole thing is anytime he dies, he comes back immune to whatever killed him the last time.
Okay.
Like
That
that's
makes a lot more sense of a lot of what I was seeing then. Okay.
yes. And that's what I should have mentioned that earlier. But like you watch Doomsday adapt and like change in real time to certain things.
Okay.
And so
It's just a science experiment.
he's a science experiment. That's why,
Okay.
he was wrapped in that like leather suit.
So,
Because he I mean in the comic book, he, just kind of is, rampaging.
yeah.
And he ends up on a pretty advanced world. It's been a while since I've read it, so I don't
Yeah.
remember the name of the world. But he ends up on a pretty advanced world, and I feel like they were able to, like, they couldn't kill him, so they were able to contain him, and
Okay.
they just put him in space because they figured he's in
Just let him
space.
float around.
Yeah, he's in space. It's fine.
Uh,
He can't hurt anybody in space, and he eventually finds his way to Earth,
yeah.
where he just kind of lays dormant for a
Okay.
long time. And in the actual comic, in the Doomsday comic book, we see it opens with him like punching his way out of the, thing he was in.
Hmm.
And I think he even still has like an arm tied behind his back. Like he's like chained up nice
Yeah.
and tight.
Yeah.
So that's why when you see him, he's in that like weird suit thing. And then eventually, the suit just kind of slowly comes off of him
Yeah.
as he's fighting.
Okay.
S-
That's
So
interesting. That's not so I know in the show that's not at all his origin at
that's what I
all.
figured.
The show, to what I recall, I should have put a big disclaimer on any of my Doomsday Smallville words, everyone listening. I have not, like I said, watched the season with Doomsday in years, so grain of salt. But if I recall correctly, he is like some sort of half Zod child. Like he's a child of Zod at some capacity.
Okay. And
Smallville.
I, Zod gets involved. So I think that
Zod
later,
always gets involved.
yeah, I think later there's a Doomsday story where Doomsday shows up and Zod is the one who like finds him, and then Zod sends him to the Phantom Zone.
Okay, yeah.
And then Zod himself gets sent to the Phantom Zone. And so, yeah, I feel like there are stories where Zod uses Doomsday for things, and
Yeah,
yeah,
if I recall, Doomsday's like like the character. He's a Kryptonian situation in the
and
show.
I believe Krypton is where Doomsday was created. Again, this
Okay,
is long, long, long
yeah.
time ago. So, like before the Kryptonians that we know.
Hmm.
Um, I think Krypton is where, like, the harsh Kryptonian land is where this creature was surviving and adapting and becoming Doomsday.
Okay.
However, while it is Kryptonian, I don't think that it gets powers the same way Superman does.
I don't recall that being the case either.
Yeah, I think it's just like through its
The thing
life is
that it
why
is.
it's the problem that it, because Doomsday's a fucking problem.
Just a little bit. I'm just like, ugh. Like you explaining that to me, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'd be a
And
problem too going through that, honestly.
yeah, rightfully so. Like your literally your purpose was to be a problem.
Yeah.
Like that's
Oh,
what you were put here to do, was to be a problem. And so yeah, that's what Doomsday's here to do.
yeah,
And
but
so
oh,
that's I think that that's how we see Doomsday. Like Flash is moving at super speed. We see Doomsday, eyes trying to figure out what's going on, and then Doomsday
right.
catches him. And that's often how speedsters get, like, that's what happens to speedsters in these situations. Um Even in, like, so if you've seen Invincible, which is an Amazon show, an Amazon superhero show. Um
I'm thinking of the wrong Invincible, so no, I haven't.
Okay. It is an animated superhero show. And in it, Omni-Man kills their Justice League. And there's a speedster who's like trying to fight him. And, he's doing the whole like punch, run away, punch, run away, punch, run away. And then eventually Omni-Man like finds him and he allows himself to be punched so that he can catch him. And so we often see whenever speedsters do this, like they eventually get caught. Like that's a pretty standard situation. And so watching that happen, like whenever Flash was doing this, I was like, Doomsday's gonna catch his ass and it's not gonna be good.
No.
And that's what happened.
Well, not good.
Yep, it was not good. And so Batman is the one who's left, and Batman is like, hey guys, can I get some help? Can I get some help, please? It's really serious over here.
Okay,
And
maybe.
yeah, Hawkman, Flash, and Green Lantern are down. So I need everyone, perhaps.
Give up.
And so we see Lex taking a trip over to Cadmus. I don't know if they mentioned that it's Cadmus, but I knew it was Cadmus. Do you know what Cadmus is? Is Cadmus in Smallville? Okay, because Cadmus may be like a later on Lex Luthor thing, but Cadmus is where he creates his clones.
No, he's
Another
good. Anything he does is just through Luthor Corp in Smallville.
Oh, Luthor Corp.
Not Lex Corp, because well, there's his
It's
father
the family. Yeah,
is
that's what I
a
figured.
big character in Smallville.
It's the family. Yeah,
Yeah.
because and in Supergirl, it's Lex's sister.
Mm.
So yeah, they just kind of do like the female version of, but yeah, Lex is in Supergirl, but Lex's sister is the main one who's, in it.
Lex's sister shows up in Smallville too. I wonder, no, this is getting off topic. Never mind. Sorry, we'll go.
That's fine.
Well, yeah.
Um,
So, sorry, go on.
and I like Lex's sister in Supergirl. But anyway, he goes to Cadmus, and I really know about Cadmus a lot because of Young Justice. Young Justice is a wonderful animated series, and Cadmus is like in the opening episodes because that's where Superboy comes from. Superboy is a clone of Superman, and Cadmus is where he gets created. And that's who we see floating in the thing. So Lex is saying like, hey, how's my project going? And the dude is like, your money's being spent well, fear not. um he's growing, there's still some time, he's still cooking, but we're working on it. Some of these other things not so great, but this one, this main one, yeah, things are growing pretty well. He is still growing, so you know he'll be out when he's ready.
Let him cook.
Yeah, let him cook. So Batman is, trying to fight this creature, uh, doing his best because that's all you can ask for in this situation. Batman's got his little bat bombs, but that's about as far as we're getting.
Yep.
Batman's just kind of revealing more of his face.
Well,
And Lois and Clark go to lunch, and we see that they end up at God, what was his name? Bibbo? Yeah.
Bimbo, Bibbo,
Bibbo Babowski. Or,
Babowski. Yeah.
maybe Babowski. I think Babowski
Bibbo
sounds right.
Babowski sounds good.
Yeah. So they go to Bibbo's place, and Bibbo's just telling stories,
Oh yeah. Who's
my
my
dear
best
friend
friend?
Superman.
Man.
And, and so Lois is clearly like, you can leave now. Thanks.
Gimme.
But he's just excited. He's just happy to be here.
He's such a happy man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this movie does, this movie makes it very clear that like everybody loves Superman. Like, Superman's
Yes.
got fans.
Yep.
And a lot of that probably has to do with Lois's writing of him. But yeah, like Superman is very loved in the community. We see a few people that love Superman. We see that earlier in the movie whenever Superman dropped Lois off. There are people just saying
Right.
hi,
Yeah.
just happy to, happy to see
Yeah.
him. So Clark says to Lois, like, hey, here's the situation. I have been hiding something from you. I'm Superman. And she's like, huh, okay.
Sure.
Like, like I watch you be clumsy around the office. Like you're not Superman. And then he takes off his glasses and says, look at me. And I was like, see that right there? Like, how do you not like really? I was like, that's how you want to do it. Because again, they make fun of the whole all you have to do is put on glasses and you're a different person. But whenever he says, like, no, look at me. Because you notice, like, he's even in Superman voice when he takes his glasses off. And she's like, my lord, how did I not see it? You
Right.
two are never in the same place at the same time. And like she starts just going through her mind of like, how did I not know this?
Right.
And so she's like, yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, I understand. I get it. And then he's like, hey, I got one more thing I need to tell you. But there's some stuff going on outside that I am needed for. So
No.
he leaves some money, he leaves a note. The note says, I had one more secret. I love you.
Oh.
And it's like, oh, alrighty. So he goes to fight this creature, and she gets picked up on the chopper because it's like, hey, we need coverage on this.
Mhm.
And so we go to the fight scene, and there are more people that are trying. We like the moment they cut to it, Cyborg's getting his arm ripped off.
Yep.
Like that's just what's happening. I was like, oh, Cyborg got done real dirty, but okay. Aquaman is able to, stab, done. And then Martian Manhunter is just intangible, being like, yeah, there's nothing in this thing's mind. Like it's just rampage and destruction. There's nothing going on. I can't shut this thing down. I love that John was just calmly having this conversation while intangible.
I I think that's the great thing about, at least I assume he's similar in every kind of thing. He's just, this is what it's
Yes.
gonna be. This is it. This is how it is. Da da da. Like it's just straight to the point. That's it. That's what it is.
Yeah, like keeps his
Like
emotions
I like
very in
that about.
check.
Yep.
And
He's
then
just like, all right,
whenever
sorry.
yeah, like whenever Batman is about to get attacked, Martian Manhunter's like, no, and then that's when they Doomsday fucks him up.
He
Because
loved it.
you know how Martian Manhunter is about fire.
Yeah.
Uh Fire is the one problem for Martian Manhunter. And I don't know why the gas station exploded, but it did. And I was like, yeah, Martian Manhunter, we might lose him today.
Yeah.
Because like there was an explosion and he was on fire.
It's rough.
And so I was like,
Stay for
because
him.
we hadn't really seen Martian Manhunter in any, like he hasn't been important. We haven't really seen him involved in things in this universe. They kind of replaced him in the main roster with Cyborg.
Okay.
So the
I was
main
wondering about that because I was excited to see him because I
yeah,
enjoy
so
that character a lot.
the main, and I'm not even gonna say the main roster, but the first seven that we see establish the league. We see the big three: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. We see Flash. We see Green Lantern. But we see Shazam and Cyborg as the other two.
Uh,
Shazam was not in this movie.
no,
And I don't know how helpful Shazam would have been, but because Shazam is like at the same level as Superman, I guess that him being in here would have been too much.
maybe a little redundant.
But yeah, so because I mean, you're not gonna be able to make him say Shazam to then, yeah. Anyway, I think that not including him was probably a good move.
Mhm.
So Wonder Woman is like already there and has already, gotten hurt. And Wonder Woman is like, uh, Beast, I challenge you to a duel.
Oh yeah.
And Doomsday's like, all right.
Oh yeah.
When Wonder Woman's hair came down, she was like,
I, when
oh,
her hair came down, like before that she even turned around, I was like, oh no, you messed up.
same thing. I honestly thought Wonder Woman's hair is down, Doomsday's not walking away.
I
Like,
really hoped for that because I was just like, you just know.
because I knew that that couldn't happen, but like,
You want it
when,
so bad.
yeah, whenever her little hairband broke, I was like, oh, you didn't, it's over now.
Yeah.
She didn't let her hair down now.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I knew that wasn't how it was going to be, but the way they presented it was like she was about to go to work.
She still
She
didn't
like she
know.
was about to make Superman's job easy. Um, and she does better than
Yeah.
everybody else does, which she should. Like
Yes.
as far as heavy hitters, like yeah, Wonder Woman is a problem. I
Is it?
love Wonder Woman. I keep saying it, but I love Wonder Woman.
She's everything.
Yes. Um, Even in the fight simulation, whenever Wonder Woman was fighting Cheetah, like she gave her a German suplex. I was like, oh, Cheetah is done. She
Yep.
got a German on the concrete, on the pavement. She's done. But Wonder Woman, she does all she can, but it does not go well for her. And Doomsday's about to kill her. Like whenever Doomsday broke the sword, I was like, oh
My heart broke.
yes.
I was like,
Because I didn't think that was a breakable sword.
right. And immediately you're just like,
And
all, oh.
that thing just shattered. And I was like, well, guess we're done here.
But
And luckily Superman showed up right on time
mhm.
to
I'm glad he did because I was like, if I have to watch her get stabbed with this right now, I don't want to watch this.
yeah, if he had killed her, I'd have been like, well, I'm done.
Which
Click.
I knew going into this when you told me which one, I was like, all right, this isn't going to be a fun time movie.
Yeah. that's
But
a part of why I wanted you for this one.
I was
Um,
like, not Wonder Woman, don't touch her.
and and Wonder Woman said, "Let me be clear. Do not hold back."
Hmm.
Like the fact that Wonder Woman, like whenever Doomsday was, over there recovering from the eye beams, Wonder Woman said, "Hey, do not hold back. I need you to hear me right now, Clark. Do not hold back because this thing is different."
Hmm.
Because whenever Wonder Woman hit him with the lasso and said, "I compel you to give up. Like, I compel you to stop. Like, we don't need, like, stop it." And the lasso wasn't able to get it done. This thing, that's how this thing is mindless.
Yeah.
This is pure carnage. And like, there's no reason, no, none of that.
No.
And so, yeah, Wonder Woman, she knew, she understood. She was like, no, put this thing down. Do not hold anything back. Usually you hold back, you're used to holding back. That's literally your whole thing because of all the power that you have. I am telling you, do not hold back this time. This thing is something else.
Hmm.
And so they begin fighting, and Lois gives it a name. And Perry's like, "All right, we have a name. She called it Doomsday. Write it up. Like that is what we are calling it, hence now and forevermore. Uh, put it in the books." And so Lex is like, "Let me go get my suit. Just,
Let me
I
get
mean,
involved where I'm not.
yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but this thing has taken down most of the league. So where's my super suit?"
That's exactly when you were going through it again. That's exactly what I heard. Honey,
Yeah. So yeah.
where?
So let me just go ahead and get that because I don't know how this thing is going to go, and it might kill him. I don't know because Lex said, "Oh, y'all sent an apex predator?
Hmm.
Oh, that means that y'all couldn't kill it
Hmm.
if y'all sent an apex predator. Oh, okay. This thing might be serious. All right." So the fighting continues into the night, and things are not looking good. It's the sun's not out anymore. Sun's getting real low.
Not that
So, and that's how I knew that this fight was going on because whenever Superman got there, the sun may have been setting, but like the sun was out. And
dark.
especially when this started, like the sun was out. Like it was, you know, high noon because they were at lunch
Hmm.
before this started. So, yeah, like it had been going on for a while. And so Doomsday is about to attack Lois, and Lex shows up with the suit and with the beam.
Yep.
And Lex is actually doing something.
A little bit.
Lex is causing some problems. And then Lex starts monologuing and
Why
starts
wouldn't
going
he?
into, yeah, he starts monologuing, and he's on his capitalist shit. Is like, let me take a piece of that flesh. I need you
Mm.
because I have an agenda.
Yep.
And then we see that Doomsday has developed eye beams, and it's like, oh shit, that's a problem. And so, because of Lex's monologuing, I would assume it's hard to keep your guard up while you're monologuing, unless you're just overwhelmingly formidable compared to your opponent. But because Lex starts monologuing, he gets ripped out of his suit and he keeps saying, "No, I'm supposed to win. It's supposed to be me." Like
Me.
Lex, like he literally is saying, "I'm supposed to win."
Yep.
Like responding like a child. And there are a lot of times where we see Lex's not only his hubris, but like his obsession just show.
Yes.
And this is a situation where we see his obsession is just loud. And
Yes.
so he gets ripped out, and Doomsday is about to kill him. And luckily, Superman saves him. which, is great, cool, wonderful. So Superman gets back into the fight, and now Doomsday's like bone claws are getting longer and sharper, and he's like, oh, this is what I because Superman, like, he was like, nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
Right.
So what?
Why would it
No.
win? No.
And Superman, Doomsday got to a point where those eye beams were ineffective.
Hmm.
Like when it was daytime, those eye beams were a problem, but like now, it's not an issue. There's a point when Superman takes him up to the space line because they came down on fire,
Yep.
which means they left the atmosphere and then re-entered. And if Doomsday wasn't too much, he could have just let him fall because that probably would have hurt a little bit. But no, Doomsday was like, no, you coming with me.
Hmm.
Because I'm sure Superman figured I can fly. And Doomsday was like, that doesn't matter.
Do you know who I am? Literally, it's
Do
just
you know who I am?
not gonna do anything, bro.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
No.
So, yeah, it's just not looking good. And so Doomsday, he, just has a big forearm claw, which, if you ever played Mortal Kombat, Baraka has those, and that's why I made that reference. And so Superman is about to die, and Lois is like, no, I
No.
will not stand for it. Now, of course, this is a situation where I'm like, okay, of course Doomsday's taking his sweet ass time because for everybody else, Doomsday was just leaping and just immediately just fucking people up. But of course, he takes his time um so that we can get the lines out and so that the movie can happen.
Naturally.
But yeah, there were some people who got killed immediately, and there were other people who he gave them a little time to breathe, or just roughed them up a little bit, but walked away. And so he's just slowly making his way toward Lois, and Lois is like, "Hey, Superman, I love you too."
Twinsies.
Yeah, samesies. So know that even if I don't make it out of this next moment, I just needed you to know that.
Hmm.
So now that I know that, Superman is like, I needed that
Always
because
guys are.
the power of friendship. Well, in this case, the power of love. But
Yeah.
that's the thing he needed. And I mean, he moves at top speed. Like he breaks the sound barrier.
Yep.
Um, and flies directly at Doomsday. And a neck is my favorite method of killing. And he does neck Doomsday.
Nasty. I was like,
But
ugh.
yeah, like turn him into an
Yeah. I
owl.
was like, oh, it's good. It just keeps going. It just keeps turning.
Yeah, but that's what needed to happen.
It did. It did. It did.
And so yeah, he's able to kill Doomsday, but Doomsday had freshly grown forearm claws and was able to, catch Superman as well.
Yeah.
Because I always wonder how they're going to do the whole death at the same time thing because it changes. It's kind of got to make sense because it's got to be a situation where Superman kind of dies from exhaustion, but succumbs to his injuries as opposed to dying like immediately. Because I feel like in Superman Batman, um, the live action one that nobody likes, Dawn of Justice, which I actually kind of like. I
I was
didn't
like,
like the Doomsday parts of that. Like that was bad, but
yeah.
that movie wasn't the worst movie I've seen. But
No.
I think that it's a kryptonite spear that Superman uses, and so because it's a kryptonite spear, that's the issue.
Enzo.
Um, yeah. But in this one, the way it happens makes sense as far as like how they both die. But in the comic book, they just like punch each other.
They just punch
And
each other.
yeah, they just punch you like it's that one final punch of like them crossing the punches, and yeah, they just kind of both die.
Okay.
But the comic book was written in the 90s, so
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and if you want to know how he died in Superman Doomsday, listen to that episode. It's the first one. Anyway, um, so Superman dies in Lois's arms, and oh, one thing I forgot to mention.
Mm.
Whenever they were on the bridge,
Hmm.
and that little boy dropped his Nintendo Switch,
Yes.
and Superman saved that little boy.
Yes.
When that little boy hugged Superman, it almost got me.
That there's a very particular scene in Smallville where a very similar situation happens where a kid goes back for something. And there's like a meteorite that's about to fall, and Clark goes and protects him, and like they have a moment, and it's just like the world pauses for him for a second. Like there's so much going on, so much destruction, but just to know, like he gets to have that moment of almost instant gratification right there of
Hmm.
just like, no, they, this is why it's worth it. This is why you're doing this.
And that's one of the things I love it whenever they put those moments into Superman situations where he is able to save a person, because
Yes, just
that's
this individual.
that's what makes Superman Superman, is
Mhm.
whenever he's able to, do what he does best, which is just save individual people and make sure that like human lives are cherished and that everybody's okay.
Mhm.
And so the fact that even through all of this, he was able to, save that boy. Um, yeah, when that boy hugged him, I was like, oh, they tried to get me. Like I felt that. And I don't
The
know if it's
heartstrings, they attempted to pluck.
yeah, I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's because I have a kid now.
That probably
Um,
helps a lot.
yeah. But yeah, like that moment, I was like, oh, I felt that.
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, when it happened, I was like, do I need to pause this movie? Like, is that I felt that. And so whenever Superman, I knew he was gonna die. Like that's the movie. Like I
It's
knew this was gonna
the
happen.
death of Superman.
Yeah, I knew it was gonna happen. But like when it happened, I was like, oh, I I feel this one. They executed this really well, I think. Um, because yeah, the whole world saw what happened. Um, you know, Jimmy was there to catch all of it. And so yes, there was a victory, but at what cost? And so we see that everybody is at the funeral except for Batman. Uh, because whenever Batman like arrives at Clark's body, like you see him doing the Arthur fist and then he lets it go
Mm.
because it was like that was my best friend.
Yeah.
And so we see that Batman is at home, very injured. And, we see that Damian kind of, tries to uh give him the, condolences hug,
Right.
which we see earlier in this again in this world of movies. Whenever Damian lost his mother, Batman did the same thing for him because in Batman Bad Blood, while Talia was the villain in that movie, um, and Talia basically said, like, you are a recalcitrant child and I don't care about you. I will make another one. Like, she was, again, that was a situation where they were like, don't forget, she's a piece of shit. Don't forget. And
Oh,
so, um, she is, flying off, escaping, and then the vessel she's in explodes because she gets attacked. And, uh, Bruce is consoling Damien, and Alfred says to Dick, like, even though she was a crazy person, it was still the boy's mother.
right.
And so this reminded me of that. Like, this was kind of a callback to like Damien, like you were there for Damien. Damien is trying to be here for you now that you've lost somebody important to you.
Yeah.
And it was a tight moment. It was you almost miss it, but if you don't have the context for those earlier movies, then it's just a regular scene. But because of the earlier movies, I feel like that's, kind of what that was.
That's cool.
Um, so Lex gets up to speak, and Lex is like, we may have had our differences, but I'm gonna miss him. like we didn't always see eye to eye, but
Let's
not
there.
yeah, yeah, not having those conversations on my balcony, that's something that you know, it's going to be weird without. And
He's
yeah,
so
then Lex is
self-serving.
yeah, then he next yeah, that night he drinking wine and I think in a celebratory way. Like he got a little snicker.
Hmm.
He's like, this is a problem I don't have to worry about anymore. And I'm gonna make it work in my favor, which we'll talk about later. Um, Lois goes to see the Kents because she knows what the situation is. And also, yes, let's talk about that. Um, so we see that the Kents are at the funeral and Martha is not okay. And the police officer is kind of like, what's hey, step back, first of
Yeah,
all.
too close.
Yeah, first of all, step back. Secondly, like, what's your deal? And Jonathan was like, Superman just really meant a lot to her. Like, she's just very sad. And so one of the things that, is evident in Smallville, he's not Superman yet.
No,
And so Martha and Jonathan are able to just be there.
correct. Because if he's hurt, it's Clark that's hurt.
Yeah, Clark is hurt.
Yeah,
And
it's not
so
Superman that's hurt.
they're able to be there. But in this situation where they have to, have that separation, that hit me too.
Yeah, it made me feel a lot. It's similar to I had the same feelings watching that as I did in A Return of Superman, the Brandon Routh Superman movie, because there's the same instance of he's put into the hospital and Martha can't go in
Hmm.
and she just has to watch and
Yeah.
like while everybody she just can't do anything.
Yeah. And yeah, as a parent, that was rough. Like I was
I
because
can't
because
imagine. Yeah.
because initially I was like, officer, the fuck is wrong with it? But then I was like,
It's like I know I was
oh,
like, do you know who she is though? But you don't.
yeah, you don't. That's the thing. You
But don't
don't.
talk to her like that.
Yeah, because yeah, at first I was like, you watch up. Yeah, I was pissed, and then I was like, oh God, yep,
Don't know. Yeah.
yep, that is that's the situation.
Is ugh,
And
hated that. I hated that so much.
yeah, I did, but I needed it
Hmm.
because that added to this. I was like, oh, but it's so good because that's exactly yes.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that hit me. And I didn't expect to feel anything when because I know what happens.
Right.
Like I was ready for it, and just because of how well it was done, I was like,
Oh,
this, ooh, okay, y'all doing something here.
right.
So, the next day, Lex is like, y'all don't need Doomsday's body. I'll just take it off your hands. You don't need it. Let
Um,
me handle it. And Letty and Star Labs is like, I know who you are, and absolutely not. We're not doing that. You are not taking. No,
not a
I.
chance.
Yeah, LexCorp is shady. And no, we're not doing that. Unfortunately, Superman and I are dear friends.
Hmm.
So, you picked the wrong one, pal.
It ain't
You
me.
can't have the body
Hmm.
because we know what Lex is gonna do.
Hmm.
And so uh Superman's rocket ship just is like, well,
Bye.
Superman's not here, so we out.
Hmm.
Because I can't just have, can't just be here for nobody. Like we're not doing that. And so then Jimmy is like, hey, Lois, come with me. And Lois is like, I'm just really not in the mood.
I'm in
Like
the morning, bro.
to be I'm not trying to chase a story right now because whenever she gets to work Clark isn't there and Kat is like, hey, they're finding people every day.
Oh, that was so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
So uncomfortable. He'll be back. Don't worry. Like, if anybody, he's got something so great to. And I was like, stop
yeah,
talking.
yeah, he's got something to come home to. It's
Yeah.
like,
Ugh.
Kat, no.
You know not what you do.
Yes. Oh God, yeah, Kat, you have no idea, but No,
Mm-mm.
no. So yeah, dealing with that, and then Jimmy's like, "Hey, Lois, come with me," and Lois is like, I don't want to do that right now. Like, I need a minute." And Jimmy's like, "No, you're gonna need to see. I'm gonna have to insist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, here are the keys. You
Okay.
drive." So, they get to the casket, and that thing is empty.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Well, what's all this then?"
Mm-hmm.
And then they look up in the air and they see somebody flying.
Who's
Um,
that?
and you know, at first I was like, if that was Superman, how is he like in his full dress? But then I was like, oh, because in the funeral they dress you up. So of course he was fully dressed.
Yeah.
Because yeah, he barely had a uniform by the time his fight was
No.
over.
No, no, no. Yeah. Ripped up.
Um, yeah, like it was in shreds. But we see, a figure in the sky who looks like Superman. And then after some credits, we see that Cadmus is they got alarms going off, and it's just a mess in there. And we see the thing that was in the fetal position
Mm-hmm.
walking out.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh,
Oh.
what? Oh, that's something.
Oh.
And then after some more credits, we see Cyborg Superman just making his way toward Earth. And we're like, oh, so there's some stuff happening.
Yep.
So, Cassidy, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this film?
I want to say I give it about an 8 because I had a good time watching it. I enjoyed that there was Justice League characters in there, and I like to see them all interact. And a lot of my consumption does not involve them interacting except for like once in 100 episodes. So I had a good time with that. Great Wonder Woman content.
Love Wonder Woman.
And I love a good Lois and Clark moment. So I had a good time. There's a good heartstring pulling moments, and I think for me personally, one of my struggles with watching animation sometimes is it doesn't hit with me emotionally sometimes the way that I feel like I want it to. But this one had the moments that I was like, oh, ooh, uh, rough. So
Agreed.
that's
And
where
again,
it stands with me for sure.
I knew what was going to
Right?
happen. Like
It's like it's
that's
literally called Death of Superman, but I'm like, oh man, why is this
that's
happening?
why I was so like, why do I feel anything? Like I knew what was coming.
It
I
told me.
oh
It told me before I
yeah,
turned it
like it wasn't a surprise, it wasn't a shock. Like
on.
I
No,
was painfully aware of
right?
what was coming. But yeah, I I think I'm gonna give this movie a 9.
Mm,
It is my second favorite Superman movie, I think. At least so far. Um, my favorite Superman movie we've already discussed. It was Superman versus the Elite. A lot less emotional, but in my opinion, does a great job of displaying the character of Superman.
okay.
Not that this movie doesn't, but
Different purposes.
yeah, like very different things happening.
Right.
So, but again, I love this version of Superman. I love this version of Superman. And I think that this movie was done very well. I'm glad that they redid it because Superman Doomsday is fine, but not spectacular.
Okay.
Uh, this movie, excellent. Like
Good time.
this is very clearly the superior version. I think that as far as on screen, this is probably the best Superman Doomsday situation. This was more faithful to the comic book than Superman Doomsday because in Superman Doomsday, the rest of the league is like not involved.
Okay.
And in the comic book, it's very different members of the league, but the league tries fighting Doomsday first and they fail. And that's when Superman has to come
Mm,
in and handle it.
handle it.
And handle it he does.
Hmm.
But okay. Anything else on the movie?
No, I'm glad I watched it. I haven't watched any animated Superman before, and the one before when I was on here before was Wonder Woman, which I had a good time with that. So it's nice to have Wonder Woman back in this one, but then a character that I have a lot of attachment to in other forms of media, Superman wise. It's nice to see him in a different light and enjoy it in a different light too. I think that was another fear I've had with watching, or fear, hesitation. I'm like, what if I don't like that Superman? But I
And
had a good
that's
time.
I mean, and that's something you got to think about because you mentioned in the last episode that you and I did that you were not a fan of Steve because the version of Steve that you're used to is not the version of Steve you got in that movie.
Yeah, that one, I did not enjoy Steve in that at all.
And
But
so
it's the, having to recognize the different versions of different things. But it's I feel like with Clark and Superman, I keep that in more of a box than I do with some other characters. Steve, I obviously kept in a very strong box, but I think that had more to do with
that was more Chris
Chris
Pine.
Pine.
Yeah.
Like I'll admit to that 100%. But like I feel like there's other characters that I'm open to some more interpretation in where it's like Clark, I'm like, this is, and I think it's because I
You
grew
got to
up
keep
with
that tight.
Clark. I grew up with who Clark was.
Mhm.
Superman, I'm like, that's Superman, but like I knew who Clark's supposed to be in my mind. So I'm like, I don't like a lot of variation, I feel like. I say that. I love seeing different interpretations of Lex though, because Lex can be the same trash human being, but presented in very, very different ways. And I think I've spoken on, I don't know if on podcast, but to you before on, there's some fantastic versions of Lex that exist that are not at all similar to one another, but are excellent, excellent choices. So I'm glad I watched this, but I'm wondering, I'm like, is it because he fit into my Superman box of what I believe Superman needs to be? And is that why I'm like, yeah, this is great?
Well, let me say this about those two things. I think that Lex has a pretty good amount of variety across the movies that we have watched so far,
Mhm.
because Lex has appeared in multiple movies, and there are certain characteristics that are consistent with Lex, but there are some things that are very different that we see from Lex across these movies because we've seen Lex probably minimum 5 times so far through this journey. Um, I know that he was in Superman Doomsday, of course. He was in Superman Batman Public Enemies. Um he was in All-Star Superman. Like we've seen him a few times through this journey. And so you can kind of see how Lex is different and how Lex is the same
Mhm.
across these movies. But yes, I like the wide range that Lex is able to have as far as his characterization. His motivation is usually pretty consistent,
Yes, I would
but
agree with that.
yeah, like as far as characterization, there's a lot of room to move there. As far as like his temperament and things like that, like he's different levels of obsessive in different movies.
Yes.
There's even a movie Justice League Gods and Monsters. Lex is in that one, and it's a completely different version of Lex. There's another movie, Crisis on Infinite or Crisis on Two Earths, and in that one, like it is an alternate universes version of Lex, so it's very different than we're
Mhm.
used to. And so, yeah, it is. Yeah, Lex. There's a lot you can do with Lex, but with Superman, I would argue that there should be a box.
Okay. That makes me feel a lot better, honestly.
Like, and I think that again, I think that I love this version of Superman because he's still in the box, but it's a larger box. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
with Superman, like you've gotta keep that tight because that's
There's,
Superman's whole thing.
yeah, there's boxes that need to be checked.
Yeah.
Have to be.
Otherwise, you're looking at like just a different like, and they have played with the idea, but the good, like I have said before, one of Superman's powers is goodness
Yes.
because we often see any clone or analog for Superman is not Superman as far as level of goodness. Every other version we see. I mentioned Omni-Man, who is in the Invincible universe, Homelander. um the Sentry or Gladiator from Marvel or Hyperion from Marvel. Like any copy of Superman isn't Superman.
No.
Um and in a lot of ways that's interesting, but Superman is one of those things that's like I don't know if you can do that twice. And so yeah, I've developed a pretty strong appreciation for Superman because there was a point when I was just not. It's not that I hated him, but like I just wasn't a big fan of him
Right.
because of his goodness and all of that. But
You get
understanding,
annoyed.
or yeah, but like me deciding that like goodness is one of his powers is like ah,
I like
because
that viewpoint a lot.
because there are we see it all the time. There are so many like if anyone could do what Superman could do and can do, like
Mhm.
we see it with Zod. Like,
Correct. And
um,
yeah, the other Kryptonian, it's
yeah,
mishandled. It's not,
we even see it
something
with
goes wrong.
Supergirl. Like, Supergirl doesn't have that same power of goodness that Superman has.
No, no.
And a lot of that has to do with her being younger, but like still, we Superman is like again, I just think one of his powers is goodness, and seeing that has allowed me to really appreciate him as a character.
Right.
And he's also the foundation for everything.
Yes.
So
He is
yeah,
it. He is the guy.
yeah, he's the guy.
The guy.
And so yeah, I love this version of Superman. And I love this version of this story. Like I think that this was done very well.
Yeah, I had a good time with that.
Okay. Okay. In the next episode, we will be discussing Constantine, City of Demons. So until then, salutations.